Hi, I'm Fire, and this is me, and I'm here, and I'm painting my guest book for my wedding. So as you can see, I've got like a very, very plain like black book to start, and I really like the interior of it, but obviously the exterior is just a little boring. So this is me customizing it. Starting out, I didn't know exactly what I wanted besides just like some florals in the color of our wedding. So I started out looking for inspiration on Pinterest, just kind of scrolling through, but I couldn't find anything that like really fit like the vibe that I wanted. And I'm a very much like visual painter. I need to see it to paint it. So after not being able to find it on Pinterest, I was like, F it, let's just make it. So I pulled open Canva, kind of like looked up a few flowers in the colors that I knew that I wanted for our wedding. So like these blue forget-me-nots and these white lily of the valleys and some lavender and some other like bullshit of about the right color, and kind of arranged it in about the pattern I was looking for, kind of trying to distribute the color out so there wasn't too much blue in one area or too much purple in one area, just really as spread out as possible. And then once I was satisfied, I had my reference so I could start painting. So obviously first thing I did is color picking. I basically tried to pick out all of the colors from like the sample that I used, or like as close as I could find. Definitely some colors had to be mixed to get exactly what I was looking for, but that's fine. I kind of freeball it with colors. But I was feeling pretty confident because I'm a decent painter and it didn't have to look like totally perfect, you know? That's the thing about painting flowers. You can kind of do some like vague squiggles and a stem and people will still think it's a flower. So I wasn't too worried starting out. But then the very first paints that I used, this green, was like horribly like gross and sticky and like was not the right consistency at all. I guess I hadn't painted with this green for quite a while and it just was totally effed. There was nothing I could do. It was like unusable. I kind of tried to salvage it. I like kept putting water in it to see if it would fix it, but it didn't. And then I tried a different green and that one was messed up too. And at this point I was starting to panic. I was like, wait, if my entire idea has hinged on painting my guest book and I can't paint it, what the heck am I supposed to do? So going back to the first green, I tried to do some copium and just like basically slapping the sticky, clumpy paint on the book and hoping it would be good enough. It worked, sort of, because the camera's a little blurry. It looks better than it is, but, you know, it wasn't great. Still, I tried to make the best of it. I did like some stems in the corners, trying to make something relatively good, but even then you can see from here how like streaky and messed up it is, you know? Thankfully, the third green I tried, this dark green, actually worked. Wow, shocker, and I was able to paint with it. Although it had its own problem, which it didn't really stick out that well against the black. But don't worry, I'd go back over it and make it a little bit lighter. And the fact that it's actually like a working paint means I was able to mix it and actually use it as intended. So we're finally on track, thank God. So I start painting some more darker leaves near the bottom and near the top, just kind of filling in the foliage first so I could have the flowers pop out on top. And then I found, miracle upon miracles, another working green, thank God. And this one was even lighter, so when I used it, wow, look at that, it actually shows up on my canvas, crazy. So at this point I was like, okay, I've got it back under control. I just gotta mix the two that actually work to use it. So I went in with our kind of like medium working green in the corner over here, doing some like drapey down vines. And then I was like, you know what? I should probably revisit that first streaky, ugly, like piss lime green and make it a little bit better. So I mixed the lighter shade of green to go over it, but then, oh, I went a little bit too light. So now I promised this looks darker when I mixed it in the, like my paint area. But on the canvas, oh my God, it looked straight up white. And if you recall in my sample image, I was supposed to have white flowers. So I can't have like white foliage on white flowers. It's not good enough. Thankfully, I had an actual decent idea to salvage it, which is basically just like while it's still wet, going over with like the mid-tone green with a little bit of like yellow mixed in. And thankfully that brightened it up in quite a nice way. And it actually looked like I knew what I was doing. It's like, ooh, look at the depths to these leaves, like with shadows and highlights and all that stuff, when really it was just, you know, the blending of multiple paints that weren't dry. But you know what? Hey, it works out. It's fine. Looks good enough. And it's not, you know, blindingly white anymore. So it's accomplishing the goal that I needed to. Taking inspiration from the color mixing on the whites, I went and added a little bit of like light-ish highlights to some of my other leaves, probably like the darkest ones, just so they like pop a little bit more. It looks a little less natural because that paint was dry, but you know what? It's fine. The point is now we can see them, and as bad as they were, or as like, you know, chunky and patchy as they were, I knew they were just gonna get covered up with flowers anyways, and that was the main star of the show. So as long as I nailed my flowers, as long as there's something green underneath, it's fine, right? It's kind of what I was figuring. Either way, it was eventually time to stop overthinking the foliage and start going to the flowers, so flowers it was. Thankfully, flowers went a lot like simpler and faster, just because like I kind of knew what I was doing a little bit and I knew exactly what I wanted in terms of flowers. I had a really nice reference photo, and flowers are like, I think in my opinion, easier than foliage, because foliage you need to draw like these thin, beautiful, wispy lines that look real. Flowers, you just kind of like smack some petals on there and it looks good enough. So that's kind of what I was doing. I was just smacking petals on there and it looked good enough. So I started with some big dark blue ones to get like really like into the zone. And then I kind of entered, I'm gonna call it literally like a flow state. I started making like these adorable little like star flowers that like, oh my God, they look so natural and so cute. I was really vibing. So I added them to one corner and then the other corner. And then again, and they just, oh my God, as soon as the flowers get on there, I think the vision really starts coming together. Like I'm looking at it even here in my post footage and I'm like, oh, she ate. I ate mostly on those little flowers. I think that's when it really like, I started to get my confidence back after messing up so much with like the greens and the paints and stuff. Then from blue, we moved on to purple. I started with this nice bright lilac-y color. And then I mixed a little bit of the darker one in for like our actual like lavender. And same thing with the little ones. I think I really like ate with all the little flowers. The big flowers, the big flowers, my petals are like very clearly like more like misshapen and chunky. But I think the little flowers, all you have to do is like a few deliberate strokes and it turns out well. So my little flowers absolutely saved me here. That makes me look like a much better artist than I actually am. Then we moved to even darker purple with even more dark lavender. And then we move finally into probably the scariest one, which is like our really light colors. So starting with yellow, I just did a little boop smack in the middle of all of our dark blue flowers, really give them that pop and make them at least sort of look like forget-me-nots. Can you tell these are forget-me-nots? I don't know. But yeah, good enough. I think it was the contrast that it needed. Then I went in with my whites and painting basically just like an upside down little like U shape for my lilies for the lily of the valley. Not gonna lie, I kind of ate on those lilies. The other big white flowers, however, were roses, and as we've already established, I think I'm kind of really good at the small flowers, but the big flowers, you know, a little less good. So I think in terms of like contrast, it was nice to have a little bit of white in the middle and like not just those two little blobs of white. But oh man, when you look back at the footage, it's so clear that the lilies of the valley are like so spot on, and then the roses are just, they're just blobs, let's be real. I sort of saved it by going in with the gray and trying to do like shadows, but even then I don't really understand how like the folds of roses work or whatever. So I was just kind of like painting squares or like lines, squared lines, whatever. And you know, it gives it a little bit more of the vision, but you know, not perfect. Although adding the shadows on the roses inspired me to do shadows everywhere else too. So first thing I did, I went back to the lily of the valley and in like the little cup area of the lilies, I kind of painted it a little bit gray so there'd be like, ooh, a little bit of depth, you know? So I don't think the lilies needed it as much as the roses did, but on the final piece, it does like help it, again, pop more, contrast more, makes it look like I know what I'm doing, even though I don't. Then I went kind of on like a contrast streak, basically going back to all of my other flowers and adding like a little bit of like, ooh, like a dark shadow flowers in the background, being like, oh, look, you can see these are the flowers in the foreground because they're a lighter color and these ones are in the background. And look, these petals have little shadows to them, and just kind of like vibing it out, trying to give it like a little bit more depth. But of course, I didn't want to overdo it or try to like completely oversell my skills. So after adding depth, I was like, I'm good. This is good enough. When it comes to painting, I'm very much like a quit when you're ahead person. So I quit. I felt ahead. And honestly, I think it came out pretty cute. Obviously, I gave it some time to let it dry and whatnot, and then here's the final look. Bam! Ooh, pretty. I think it looks better from a distance than it does up close, but hey, this was like a $10 guest book, and the other ones with all lots of pretty floors and stuff were like closer to $20 or $30. So I saved myself $20, and it only took an hour of my time, and now I've got something custom to show off at my wedding. So overall, I think it's worth it. Wow. Anyway, I hope you liked the video. I promise I'll post more in the future. I just sometimes forget that this channel exists, or just don't have time to create in between all the gaming. But either way, thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you around. It's Fire signing off. Goodbye.